In this video, we are going to see what are outliers, what are the types of outliers, and what is the difference between an outlier and a noise, and what are the outlier detection methods. So we'll see what is an outlier first. An outlier is a data object that deviates significantly from the normal objects as if it were generated by a different mechanisms. So you can see a set of data points here, and all these data points we can make a cluster. Here it is two and other data points, right? That is, these two data points behavior is completely different from these data points. So I can call this as a outlier. It is showing an exceptional or an unexpected behavior, so we can call it as a outlier, right? So outliers are actually different from the noise data. Noise is different, outlier is different. Noise is actually a random error or a variance in a measured variable. So noise actually it should be removed before the process, before outlier detection or before doing the data mining process. Noise will be removed in the data pre-processing stage only. We'll removing the noise. So noise is different and outlier detection is different. Actually, the study of outliers are interesting because it violates the mechanism that generate the normal data. Now, we'll tell one example. Actually, the examples of outliers are some unusual credit card purchase. Purchase is an example of outlier. Suppose a customer may generate, sometimes they will generate some kind of noise transactions. It is seems like random errors or a variance, such as suppose a customer is buying a bigger lunch one day, or he is having one more cup of coffee than usual. So such a kind of transactions, actually it is not a noise, it is an exceptional behavior, or is it from the normal behavior. So we can call it as a outlier. Now, what are the applications of outlier? Outlier can applications are credit card fraud detection, telecom fraud detection, customer segmentation, medical analysis, etc. Are the examples of applications of outliers. Now we had seen that what is an outlier. Outlier is totally different from the normal data. It is showing some exceptional behavior or some unexpected behavior, that is called as outlier. So outlier detection is important, or outlier study is important, because we can find out many unexceptional behaviors by studying the outliers. Now there are different kinds of outliers are there. Mainly there are three types of outliers: global outliers, contextual outliers, and collective outliers. Global, contextual, and collective outliers. So we'll see what is an global outliers. So in a given data set, a data object is a global outlier if it deviates significantly from the rest of the data set. So whatever the data set we are having, in that some data points or one or two data points are showing significantly different behavior, then we can call it as a global outlier. Global outlier is also known as point anomaly, and it is the simplest type of the outlier. So most of the outlier detection methods are aimed at finding the global outlier. Now, the second category of outliers are contextual outliers, which is also known as conditional outliers. So, as the name indicates, it depends on the context or it depends on the behavior. For example, suppose we are telling like that. Now, the today the temperature is some 12 degrees centigrade. So whether it is an outlier or it is a normal thing, it depends on the context. For example, 12 degrees centigrade, if it is in winter, it is not an outlier, it is a normal data. But the same thing, if it is in a summer, we can call it as an exceptional behavior and it is a outlier. So contextual outliers are depends on the context and behavior. So contextual outliers In a given data set, we can define it as in a given data set, a data object is a contextual outlier if it deviates significantly with respect to a specific context of the object. So contextual outliers, as I told, it's also known as conditional outliers because they are conditional on the selected context. And there are mainly two types of contextual outliers. One is, we can have two groups. One is contextual attributes and another one is behavioral attributes. Contextual attributes means it defines the context based on the time and location. Behavior attributes mean it characteristics of the object used in an outlier evaluation. Example, temperature. So it can be viewed as a generalization of local outliers. The issue with the contextual outlier is how to define or formulate a meaningful context. So if to identify that it is an outlier, we need that context. So how you can define that context, that is the difficulty with the contextual outliers. Now the third type of outliers is the collective outlier. Collective outlier means a subset of data objects collectively deviate significantly from the whole data set, even if the individual data object may not be the outliers. So this is an example of collective outlier. See, all these data points are similar and it is showing the same behavior. Among these set of these data points is showing some exceptional behavior. So it is a collection of outliers. It is not one or two, it is a collection of outlier. That's why the name called as collective outliers, that is showing a different behavior than the normal outliers. Again, the application is intrusion detection. So when a number of computers keep sending a denial of service package to each other, it is a type of collective outliers. Another example of collective outliers is, suppose you handle thousands of orders and shipments every day. If the shipment of an order is delayed, it may not be considered as an outlier because due to some reason one shipment can be delayed. But if 100 orders are delayed in one day, then we can call it as an exception or an outlier, and it is a type of collective outlier. So detection of collective outliers consider not only the behavior of individual object but also that groups of object. Here it is not individual, it depends on the groups of the object. So we need to have a background knowledge of the relationship among the data object, how they are similar, what such as a distance or what similarity measure we are using, then only we can consider it as a collective um, outlier. So a data set may have multiple type of outliers. An object may belong to more than one type of outlier, etc. Now, what are the challenges of outlier detection? So the main challenges of outlier detection are modeling normal objects and outliers properly, application specific outlier detection, handling noise in outlier detection, understandability, etc. are the example challenges of outlier detection. So what do you mean by modeling normal object and outliers separately? So actually it is hard to enumerate all possible normal behaviors in an application. So we need to know that the border between which is normal and which is the outlier. So modeling with this, if it is showing this kind of behavior, then it is a normal data. If it is showing this kind of behavior, it is an outlier data. So that modeling is little difficult. Keeping that boundary is little difficult in the case of outlier detection. Now another one is application specific outlier detection. So choice of distance measures among object and the model of relationship among the objects are often application oriented. So for example, clinical data, a small deviation could be an outlier, right? But while in marketing analysis, a large fluctuation only can be considered as a outlier. So whether it depends on the application domain where you are going to use that particular application, based on that whether it is an outlier or not, it will vary. If I'm taking in clinical data, a small deviation we can consider it as an outlier. Same thing if I'm taking in the marketing analysis, large fluctuations is considered as a Outlier. Now, handling noise in an outlier. So we know that noise is different and outlier is different. So sometimes noise may distort the normal object and blur the distinction between the normal object and the outliers. It may help hide outliers and reduce the effectiveness of outlier detection. If noise is present, we'll try to remove the noise before doing outlier analysis. But still, if outliers are there, then it may hide the outliers and we cannot identify the outliers. Another one is understandability. So in some applications a user may want to not only detect outliers but also understand why the detected objects are outliers. Not only that, this is an outlier, he wants the justification, he wants the background knowledge why it is an outlier. Sometimes this is going to be difficult. So specifying the degree of an outlier, the unlikelihood of the object being generated by a normal mechanism. So these are the main challenges in outlier detection. Now we will see what are the outlier detection methods. What are the different outlier detection methods? So outlier detection methods we can classify in different ways. Two ways we can classify. One is based on whether user labeled examples of outlier. This can be classified into supervised, semi-supervised and unsupervised methods. Now, based on the assumptions about normal data and outlier, it is classified as statistical, proximity based and clustering based methods. So we will see one by one methods. So the first classification is whether user labeled examples or not. Based on that, we are having three methods: supervised, semi-supervised, and unsupervised. So we'll see the first one, that is supervised methods of outlier detection. In supervised methods, model data normality and abnormality. So domain experts examine and label the sample of the underlying data. So they will be checking that which is outlier detection, which is outliers and which are the normal data, and we are going to label it. If these parameters are satisfied or these characteristics are satisfied, then it is coming under the normal data, and if this is satisfied, then it is a outlier data. So outlier detection can be modeled as a classification problem. In this method, we can model it as a classification problem. The task is to learn a classifier that can recognize outliers. So the sample is used for training and testing. In some applications, the expert may label just the normal objects, and any other objects not matching the model can be considered as an outlier. So the challenges related to this method is imbalanced classes. So outliers will be rare, right? So boost the outlier classes and make up some artificial outliers as required. Now catch as many outliers as possible, but recall is more important than accuracy. So not mislabel any normal object as an outlier. So actually in supervised methods, we are going to make a classifier to detect whether it is an outlier or whether it is a normal data. And the second one is unsupervised methods. In unsupervised outlier detection methods make an implicit assumption. That means the normal objects are somewhat clustered. So in that is an unsupervised outlier detection methods expects that normal object follow a pattern far or more frequently than outliers. Normal object do not have to fall into one group sharing high similarity. Instead, they can form multiple groups. But sometimes this assumption may not be true also. So an outlier is expected to be far away from any groups. That means normal object will follow a certain pattern. So we'll call it as a normal thing. If it is varying from that particular pattern, then we will call it as a outlier. The weakness of this method is cannot detect collective outliers effectively. So because collective outlier, all the collective outliers may be following the same pattern. So normal objects may not share any strong patterns, but the collective outliers may share high similarity in small area. So example of this type of methods are in some intrusion or virus detection. Normal activities are diverse. So unsupervised methods may have a high false positive rate but still miss many real outliers. Supervised methods can be more effective than the unsupervised methods. Now many clustering methods can be adapted for unsupervised methods. So some clustering methods also we can make use in the case of unsupervised methods. Now the third category is semi-supervised methods. Semi-supervised methods means in many applications the number of labeled data will be small. So labels could be on outliers only or normal objects or only or both. So you know that we in a semi-supervised data, few data will be labeled, few will not be labeled. So we need to decide that whether the labeled data is a normal data or it is an outlier or both. So semi-supervised outlier detection is regarded as applications of semi-supervised learning. In some labeled normal objects are available. So use the labeled objects and the proximate unlabeled objects to train a model for normal objects. Those not fitting the model of normal objects are detected as outliers. Now, if only some labeled outliers are available, a small number of labeled outliers, many not cover the possible outliers as well. So to improve the quality of outlier detection, one can get help from the models for normal objects learned from unsupervised methods. So we can call it as a combination of supervised and unsupervised method. Now, apart from this, we are using some statistical method, proximity based methods, and cluster based methods in outlier detection process. So statistical method, it is also known as model based methods. Assume that the normal data follow some statistical model. Always the normal data are following some statistical model. So the data that is not following that particular model, we can call it as an outlier. So we can see in this figure, all these things are following a pattern, or we can say that it is following a distribution, Gaussian distribution, and whatever it is not following that distribution, we can call it as an outlier. So effectiveness of statistical methods, it is highly depends on whether the assumption of statistical model holds in the real data. So there are rich alternatives. That means the statistical method itself, we are having two categories, parametric and non-parametric. The second one is proximity based methods. So as the name indicates, it is based on proximity. An object is an outlier if the nearest neighbors of the object are far away. If the neighbors are far, then we can consider it as a outlier. That is, the proximity of the object is significantly deviates from the proximity of most of the other objects in the same data set. So as we are seeing here, this for these group of data, we can see object in region R is substantially different from all other object in this data set, because the neighbors are far from this, it is not near. So we can call this as an outlier. The effectiveness of proximity based methods highly relies on the proximity measure. In some applications, proximity or distance measures cannot be obtained easily, often have a difficulty in finding group of outliers which stay close to each other. So two major types of proximity based methods are distance based and density based on the distance and based on the density. And the next one is outlier detection based on clustering based methods. We had gone through different clustering based methods, like distance methods, partitioning method, density based method, etc. So based on clustering methods also we can find out whether it is an outlier or not. So normal data belong to large and dense clusters, whereas outlier belong to small or sparse clusters, or do not belonging to any cluster. Again, the same example. Here we can consider this as a cluster with a normal behavior, but these two are apart from all these things. So it is a separate behavior it is showing. So all points not in R form a large cluster. So we can consider R as a tiny cluster and we can call it as a outlier. Since there are many clustering methods, there are many clustering based outlier detection methods as well. So clustering is actually expensive. Straightforward adaptation of a clustering method for outlier detection can be costly and does not scale up well for a large data set also.